And then we also looked at different therapies in Seattle, but they were all like, there was a wait list for 8, 9 months.
Wow.
And if you cannot get all the therapies before the 3-year-old mark of a kid, apparently the neuroplasticity is something that kind of starts solidifying after 3. So it's just harder. So we had this thing. So we are like, okay, so we found a speech therapy after we waited like 9 months in Seattle.
Hmm.
And until then, we were just doing all these things at home. So I think that really caused that burnout, like doing your household work, then doing the special thing, then, doing like your 8, 10 hours at work. It was really crazy.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Desi Return. Today, I'm really excited to have Ananya on our show. Ananya actually went to US for her undergrad and completed her undergrad, worked there before deciding to move back to India. And we are going to delve into a lot of details how she has planned her move and where she is currently and what her future plans are. With that, I want to welcome Ananya to the show.
Hi, everyone. Thank
So,
you, Avinash. Yeah, thank you for starting this channel. I would love to share my journey and, influence anybody who is at the juncture of moving somewhere.
yes, thanks a lot for being open to share your story and journey with us. With that, if you can share a little bit about your background, when did you go to US and the reasons why you started thinking about moving to India, so that would be very helpful.
Sounds good. Hi, guys. So, my name is Ananya, and I'm from Kolkata in India, born and brought up. And then when I was in 2008, that's when I moved to the US to kind of finish my undergrad in Purdue. And after that, we were there for almost 14 years. I did my master's. I also worked for a bunch of FANG companies like Facebook and Intel. And I also lived in different parts of the US. Started in the Midwest, went to Seattle for 3, 4 years, then got married, and we lived in San Francisco and all the way down to the peninsula up to Mountain View. And then we ended up buying a house in San Mateo. And then my son was born, and we moved to Seattle for another 4 years. And we also got a house there. And then after 14 years, we were kind of like starting to feel bored. We were also feeling very burnt out, working crazy hours in these FANG companies. And COVID had also hit us. So we were really thinking about moving back to Asia, mostly to India, because even our parents are there and we just wanted to be there for them. So this feeling had already started, growing in us. And then just like we got a health scare for our son, where he was when he was 2, and he was diagnosed with autism. And just finding healthcare in the US was very tough, especially it was COVID as well. And that's when we just flew to India for like a small, like break from office. And I was very surprised how we could eat, how we could like quickly get healthcare, how we could afford it, the frequency of the care. Everything worked really in our favor, and our son was already like improving. And then after some time, we took more time off from work, and we got really good care for 9 months in India, and then we moved back to the US. And in the US, it was just like lack of resources was really evident, like in healthcare, like the lack of doctors, availability of therapists. Like they would only do once a week or once 2 weeks, so which was not enough. And plus the growing homelessness and the gun violence, these things were starting to become this big beast. And that's when we decided that, okay, we decided a month that when we are going to exit the US. And yeah, just when we were leaving, I got an offer to work in Tokyo. And I was very excited, always visited here and was excited about how it would be like to live here and work here. So yeah, we were not really sure with healthcare and with the language how it's going to pan out. But I think at the end of 2 years in Tokyo, it's really good, and it was a good decision. And we are already glad that we are so close, to India, like almost halfway between US and India. And I think eventually we do want to get back to India. It's still on the cards. So yeah, that's just a summary.
No, thanks a lot for such a nice overview. I think you kind of covered most of the like the journey. Maybe if you are okay, I wanted to get a little bit more details of specific information. Um, Sounds like I think you moved around in US. So is there any place that you like most? Just curious, like a fun, because I think you said you've been in Midwest, Seattle, Bay Area, Texas.
Yeah.
So yeah, any place
Oh
that
my
you like
God.
the most?
Yeah, my favorite question. So I love Seattle,
Yeah,
because love the mountains, love nature, and everything was great until we had a baby. Because yes, it does rain, and more than the rain, it's the cloudiness
yeah,
that makes you sad. And when you're like 30 plus, the bones start aching because of vitamin D lacking of vitamin D. So after a kid, we realized the parks are always wet, and it's so cold, so wet and cold. So it was not ideal after that. And also in Seattle, there was just too much homelessness near in all the parks, the kid parks. They had tents, syringes in the park, so made it very unsafe.
mm,
Even and this was like near the campus of UW, the University of Washington. So it's a very good neighborhood, but it's so unsafe. So Seattle is great, and then because it's also close to Canada, and yeah, very pretty.
yeah.
Other fun city that I would recommend is also Austin, Texas, because the drinks are awesome, the food is awesome, and because of so much like Mexican Spanish influence, you also work with a lot of Spanish people in offices, and their hospitality and the just niceness really rubs on you. And there is like music everywhere in Austin,
Yeah,
because there is the Austin City Limit Music Festival, South by Southwest. So a lot of artists coming in and out. So the vibe is just great. And I used to live close to the UT Austin campus.
yeah.
And when I was working there for Intel, I could also like take classes in UT Austin. So it was just a very nice small little city in Texas.
I'm sure I think things might have changed now, but before it used to be a college town, right, with the UT Austin, for sure. Yeah, thanks for sharing that. So,
Yeah.
sounds like I think you have started feeling a little bit bored and lonely maybe later. So, you didn't have the idea of moving to a different country from US from early on, maybe later in the life. That's when you felt like to explore, and I think maybe with your kid situation, I think it just accelerated. Is that right? Or
Yeah, yeah. So in the US also, like I did travel quite a lot alone. I travel to Central America a lot. Like Costa Rica, I went like thrice. I also traveled to South America, like Colombia and Peru, and like I would always imagine how it would be like to live in those places. If I had to spend day to day, I was noticing the how people live their lives there. And also went to Mexico a few times. So I have been traveling and then, trying to make a list of places where I think, I would like to live down the line. Yeah, so, and after having our kid also, we told ourselves, like me and my husband, that, it'll be nice to redo these things, like go to that same ski resort or, do the same things, but with him, this will be his first time. But when we actually started doing that with our kid, I realized that no, I was still feeling jaded. I could not bring the organic excitedness that I thought it would be. So that's when I thought that maybe, yeah, maybe we are really done here. And we have like such a long life ahead of us. Let's do something new, a new place.
Yeah,
So
no, thanks for sharing that. If you are okay, I mean, if you can share a little bit more specifics, if it's okay, because there are some families who might have like a child that requires some, some additional health support or whatnot. So uh, maybe if we can start like, your experience in US, maybe again, it might be due to COVID or it could be for different reasons. And then like your experience in India. So this could help for families who might be in a similar situation, when they were looking at evaluating the health system at both US and India. If you can share some details, specifically your experience before deciding to give it a try in India. And then I think you mentioned that you went back to US again and then you have experienced something. So if you can like, compare and contrast or share your insights on that, that would be very helpful.
sure. Yeah, so with healthcare, like, before our kid, we really did not use so much of the healthcare there. We were provided a healthcare from our companies, and we used to do our regular, like, yearly checkups and dental cleaning and stuff like that, which was all okay. Um, but then with our son, we realized that once, he was in a daycare and the teacher kind of mentioned that, hey, you should get this autism assessment done. And then that's when we started playing with this healthcare system. And quickly we realized that in the US, especially in Seattle, it was very challenging because there are like you cannot get an assessment for a 2.5-year old because like it's state provided, and then there's a this, and during COVID for 1 year nobody was assessing. They could not come and assess, and they also say that if you assess, there's a label that gets tagged to the kid, it follows them to the school. Then there is also something called integrated, schooling, where once the state official assesses you, they are going to reserve a space for the kid in a school, and all this was like very hard in the back end.
Mhm.
And they all were like 1 year long processes, and because they really have to determine if you really need this special quota or not. So it was tough. And then that's when we went to India, because my in-laws, they are doctor, and we were able to like quickly see like a good pediatrician in Delhi. And we went to this hospital called Gangaram, and um, quickly he got evaluated, for like the different categories of autism. And then they quickly suggested that, yeah, you can start here with the therapy. You can do Monday to Saturday for 2 hours. So it was so amazing, like, having that support system. Like, so like for the next almost like a month, we did that like Monday to Saturday. We didn't even go outside Delhi. We were just doing therapy. And we also learned how to do it at home, because we knew that after we come back to the US, we have to do it at home. And even the doctor said that, yeah, you cannot send him to a daycare for so long. You have to spend a lot more time with him. So it was very good. But when we went back to the US, that's when the struggle started. Because with our like very demanding jobs in Facebook, it was just so hard to kind of do these kind of therapies at home, and and also not ignore him, but like you have to ignore him when you're working. It was so hard. And then we also looked at different therapies in Seattle, but they were all like, there was a wait list for 8, 9 months.
Wow.
And if you cannot get all the therapies before the 3-year-old mark of a kid, apparently the neuroplasticity is something that kind of starts solidifying after 3. So it's just harder. So we had this thing. So we are like, okay, so we found a speech therapy after we waited like 9 months in Seattle.
Hmm.
And until then, we were just doing all these things at home. So I think that really caused that burnout, like doing your household work, then doing the special thing, then, doing like your 8, 10 hours at work. It was really crazy. And that's when we decided to leave. And then we decided Bangalore was like, yeah, like Silicon Valley of India, more options and stuff. So yeah, healthcare wise, yeah. And when so in fact, when we went back to US, we found it difficult, and we had to come back to India again, because that's when I took like a 6 month medical leave, family medical leave, which is a great feature from the US, at least for the new companies. So yeah, kudos to that, at least, that I was able to, like, retain my pay, my position, and like also be absent. And yeah, those 6 months, like me and my husband just like, just did therapy. And yeah, those 6, 7 months really made a change.
That's great.
And coming back to Seattle, then we did some speech therapy. The quality of speech therapy was very, very good in Seattle. However, the frequency of that and was kind of challenging,
Hmm.
was not enough. I wish they have more resources, human resources, to have these therapies, provided to everyone who needs.
Okay. No, thanks for sharing that. So sounds like I think maybe after your visit back to US, that's when I think your plan to move has been solidified because of the burnout, because of a lot of things and all that stuff. So if you can share, like, from a logistics wise, like from a career planning, from like the time to move to a different country, like can you talk a little bit about that? Like, is it like been 6 months or 9 months in plan, or is it just like, you made a decision and then started looking into some of the next steps? So I think that would be very helpful.
Yeah, so we actually started planning about it in 2021 December. And then I remember that I was also like interviewing for my Tokyo job over Christmas, and then I got the offer in Jan. And then we kind of planned that our exit date would be like March, April. So kind of time bounded it, and then after that we kind of, like made the like back end schedule, where we started looking into things like moving company, arranging that, figuring out the estimate for that. We also had to, the main thing was selling our house in Seattle. So selling our house, getting it ready for so everything are like categories. The first thing is your house. Second is like planning to move your money to India. And then third, I would say, yeah, like the shipping company. And then once you have that figured out, also where will you ship your stuff to in India, so those kind of things. And then we have a cat. We still have him. He's not in Tokyo right now, but he's been with us in US for almost like 10, 12 years. So we had to also ship him to India.
Yeah.
So then figuring out like what is the process for India to import him, vaccinations, all the certificate. And then this was just after COVID, when I think United was the only airlines that was flying from SFO to India that time. So, and then we were also thinking Lufthansa, but Lufthansa last moment said no pets allowed
Hmm.
during COVID. So United was our only thing, only method. And we were also thinking, like, do we ship him in a ship or something, or like it was so it was not clear how do we do with a pet. So if you have a pet, that's another thing. And one thing we didn't have to look into was like schooling of the kid in India. So and once we reached India, we realized that, oh my god, summer vacations are on, so you have to take care of the kid. I was like, oh man.
Yeah.
So yeah, I would say, like, you have to start planning on these lines. And then each of these categories is like another deep dive.
Yes.
So like for the house also, like, like we did estate sales. So like we literally did cutouts, and we promoted everywhere, taking pictures, then selling our car one by one, but keeping one car for like the last few
Last.
days.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um so yeah, they all were, so it was a very busy time.
Yeah, I
But
can imagine.
yeah, but it took us about 3 months, I would say, to execute everything. And the more time you have, it's better.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then, yeah, and I think one of my biggest challenges was also like transferring, the money movement. I had, so, yeah, we can get to that later. But yeah, these are the uh, main
Cool.
topics.
So maybe before, maybe I'm just curious. I know maybe after your experience with your kid, in terms of the health system, you made a decision to move out of US. But curious, like, why not India? Like maybe again, these big corporations has the offices in Bangalore or some other places. Just curious, like why, how you ended up in Tokyo versus India, like the applying the jobs. If you're
Yeah.
okay to share, I'm just curious. Again, I think if you have the plan to move, and then I don't know if there is any change or something came up and you just took the opportunity. Just curious on that.
Yeah, no problem. So yeah, like I was looking into some opportunities in India, but I don't know. I had a very, I was also thinking that in India it would be good to work for, myself, because finally I'm in my home country. I can work on any industry, in any product role. So I wanted to like not suddenly get tied up with a corporate giant, into the typical roles. So I'm a TPM, a technical program manager. So it's a very coordination heavy, stakeholder management heavy, a lot of meeting heavy role. So I just didn't want to like jump into that in India. So that was my secret thing, that I want to just like work for myself. And then the Tokyo thing, just like it was just miraculous. Like somebody, I got the job through LinkedIn, and for a long time I almost thought that somebody's going to scam me. And then so I was like, okay, just let me go through it. I don't know Japanese language, and it's a far shot. But then when it worked out, I was just like pretty happy. And we were very concerned about our son's thing, though, like now moving into a Japanese language thing. It's also not as social as India is. So I was like, okay, he won't get that environment that we were envisioning that he would get in India. So is it making sense? And then in Japan also, they don't give too much attention to special needs. Like these kind of things are just like shoved under the rug. So we were like, how do we how it's going to be? But I was like, like this is one, like my aspiration, to live and work here, so let's give it a try. And yeah, and that's when after like we left Seattle and we moved to India for 2 months while I was waiting for my Japanese visa to come. And so yeah, we went and like kind of did a little proof of concept of living in Bangalore for 2 months. And then yeah, then we headed to Tokyo.
Okay, great. So I know, I think one of the key reason is maybe the support system for your son, as well as I think the other things like the burnout that you had. So you were looking for something. Just curious, like how is it going in Japan? From that perspective, yeah, like maybe.
Yeah. So Japan can be tricky. So like for me, I'm in a good spot because I'm still working for a company that's which has an American management. So that's why the work life balance is still maintained. And here, I don't own a car, so there's no hassle of driving and all that. And the trains here are amazing. Like every 3 minutes, a commuter train. So me and my son, we are like taking the train everywhere. So because of this good accessibility, we are saving time. And surprisingly, we have also made a lot of friends in from the school. And like a lot of expats here, there are a lot of expats here, and they really are friendly, and they want to make friends. Like compared to the US, where I felt that if you don't have a lot of things in common, it was very hard to make friends, and everybody was so busy in their drop off and pickups, and hardly there was time. But here people are like, they want to have play dates, meet. So I love that. In Japan, I also like that once the Japanese people commit to meeting you over the weekend, they always show up. And I remember, like in Seattle, I was also one of them who would be like last moment saying that, oh, hey man, like let's take a rain check. So so I was like, oh no, like, and then that pushed me here, that I'm like, you know what, if they are showing up, I better show up every time, I let me not lie and say I'm going to come and then I don't come. So, so in that way, the social scene is nice. And I do agree that here, like even in Tokyo, people don't speak English that much. And so, it's hard to have a conversation with a Japanese person beyond a certain level. So you might feel that, oh, I cannot talk about politics or some other like, topic that I want to deep dive. But I would say still it's a nice camaraderie, and like it's warm. And yeah, it's not as warm and hospitable as maybe a Philippines or India, but definitely warmer than Western countries. And so yeah. And my son has learned how to be patient in the trains. He has learned like all the station names, so he really enjoys taking the train. And yeah, in that way I feel like we have saved a lot of time.
Yeah.
Um, and there are a lot of extracurriculars for kids, and for the weekend. So there are a lot of ways to spend time. However, the schooling system in Japan is a bit flawed, and it's very selective. Like if you are very rich, then only you can afford the international schools.
Hmm.
But if you don't want to shell out like 10 grand a year, then your other option are the Japanese schools, where you learn everything in Japanese, and the only English is a subject, but that's also not like pure English. It's almost like a Japanese way of saying English. So I think unless you're planning to live here long term, it's not efficient if you are just in that system.
Okay.
So yeah, schooling I think is our main motivation why we want to like exit Japan, and and India would be our next landing place.
Okay, no, thanks for sharing that. Maybe just going back to like some of the topics that you covered, maybe if we can go to that. I think, if I understand, I think you mentioned you selected Bangalore as your spot for like your
Yeah.
soft landing. I'm guessing, it's still like close by to the family to visit them, but it's more to do with, the opportunities and like what would be a good place to settle in India. Um,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, Bangalore also like climate wise, it's cooler than a lot of other places. So we really like that. And it being the Silicon Valley really also is a land of opportunities for us. So yeah, that was the main reason.
The other category that I think you kind of touched about is like, some on the financial side. If there is anything that you wanted to share or anything? I think, especially like you mentioned about the money movement or some other things, right?
Yeah.
If there are any things that you wanted to communicate from your perspective, that would be helpful. Yeah, I would love to hear some insights on that side.
Yeah, sure. So, yeah, banking has been challenging. But thanks to my dad, like he asked me to open, like in one of my previous trips to India, like he really forced me to open an account and have it like with ICICI, and I was like, I was not in a mood of doing those things, but thankfully he made me do it because that was one problem that when we decided to leave the US, it was very difficult to open any account remotely. And I would say ICICI had a very good overseas support. So they couriered me all the docs to Seattle, and they opened it. Because banking in India is also linked to you having a phone, Indian phone, where they can send OTPs and stuff. And if you are not prepared with all these things, it's very hard last moment to set up these things. So I would say anybody who is thinking about moving, to really like set up with your bank, and then also start doing a lot of like trial wire transfers and making sure that your pipeline is set up to transmit the money. Because since I only was doing the last 2 months of my move, and even like the initial wire transfers really failed because the system doesn't trust you, and so there are a lot of these systematic dependencies. So yeah, that would be my advice, just to start early. Yeah, and I also learned about this awesome option called FCNR. So basically, like, you can transmit all your USD savings as USD into an Indian bank. So what it helps is like the money is still geographically closer to you, but you've also have locked in the USD, to a USD format. So whenever you want to, make it liquid at your end, you can get the rate that would be current that time.
Yeah.
So that would make a lot of saving. So yeah, so like, research all these things and like, try to set it up. And then I also learned that there is a time period until which you can keep it as FCNR. So yeah, you need to also make it look liquid after you lose your, I think, NRI status. So start looking into those things.
Yeah. I mean, I think you said an important point. Like everything in the Indian banking system is associated with your phone number, the OTP. Even
Yeah.
for a small transaction, they ask for an OTP, and like the UPI payments, everything is associated with it. I think you bring up a good point about setting up the plumbing ready for the transfers, and also the system to trust, because when they see these big transfers, they might like red flag it because
Yeah.
this is not usual and whatnot. So thanks for sharing that. Uh, is there any topic that we haven't covered that you would like to cover, that would be beneficial for the audience?
Um, Yeah, maybe like, I don't know, but I haven't touched about 401ks and stuff like that. I haven't actually converted or transferred. Like I haven't like, yeah, like withdrawn my done the early withdrawal yet, so I don't know what it entails. So those are still tied. Another thing I found valuable was a lot of my like systems in India were connected to my US phone number. So I still kept my AT&T number alive even until now, because even I get some OTPs on my US number. So like even a lot of the 401k Fidelity accounts are related. So I would say keep that in mind as well. Um, and yeah, and like right now I am also applying for my son's schools in India, and that's another beast that
Yeah.
I have noted. Like I love India, like awesome people, great food, like improve my son's health, super happy. But schooling is another beast, because now, like, compared to when I was in school, now international schooling, that the tag is everywhere. Every school is international. And what I have noticed, at least in Bangalore, is like a lot of the management companies that that does the PR for the school. They call it international. They specify that they are very inclusive. They have therapies for differently abled kids, and that they are not purely academic. But unfortunately, when they do these interactions and interviews with kids, they never talk about hobbies and or they straight away just go to the academic portion of the test. And the expectations from even a UKG applicant is tremendous compared to the kids who are like same age kids who are going to schools in Japan, international schools in Japan, and also kids who are going to a US school. So, like ideally, yeah, the kids should learn those things in school, but the expectation in India, because of the competition as well, is that no, you should know everything when you're entering. You're just going to hone it or something. So, and this kind of a pressure early on creates a butterfly effect on all the parents, the systems, and everybody all the time is talking about studies and and I'm like, oh my god, 5 years ago this kid was not even born. So so I just feel like there, and yeah, so between the management of the school and the teacher who does the testing, there is a disconnect. Because at least when for parents who are applying online from the outside, who doesn't have that opportunity to always be on ground, getting the white check of the school, they're doing it on, so it's hard to know what's the reality and what's being shown online. So I think that is another factor that I have not now learned, that one should also weed out. So yeah, definitely be there in person to kind of know, how the people are of that school, what are their hidden intentions and real intentions, and then yeah.
So just
So
curious, like how are you filtering out like the schools and see which one is the right school for your kid? Is it just talking to the people? Just curious. As you said, like
yeah, I think
many schools and everybody says the right things, but in practice it could be a little bit different. So just wondering how you're approaching in selecting a school for your son.
yeah, like the first thing we did was like based on where we are living, we started only targeting schools to that, nearby. And then from then just apply to everything. And then, then it started with the interactions where we failed that first interaction and we learned what they're expecting.
Yeah.
So we started to prepare for the second one. But again, with kids, you cannot teach them these things overnight. Like they cannot learn A to Z phonics in overnight or over a week. You know, so you just do your best at home, and then so you learn with every interview, and then the basis of rejection, you use that basis to question the next school, that hey, how much, what's the student to teacher ratio, how much is academics, and then then you can get understand, with what the teachers are saying and asking, what is their intensity.
Yeah.
um, so and so that is one. But I would say, at least for India, it's best that you are there in person, to kind of recce and survey the place, the school. That is, you must do that as well. So yeah.
Okay. Makes
Yeah,
sense.
yeah. And also another thing I learned about, like, Google reviews for like all these schools. A lot of schools, I think most of them like either like buy reviews and the PR. So you cannot trust reviews, because some people are just like just say random things, and then some are really nicely worded because they're paid by the school. So it's like you just cannot tell what's the real thing from reviews.
Yes. Okay. No, thanks for sharing that. There is one point that I want to go back. I think you mentioned about like maintaining the AT&T numbers to still get your OTPs and so on. Just want to let the audience know. I know there are options called like a Google Voice, that works with most of the financial institutions. So we can provide the list of the financial institution where you still can get the OTPs. And that's a one-time port fee that you pay, but it's completely free, and there are other options. So just wanted to make a note about that for the point that you mentioned earlier, Ananya, regarding maintaining the number so that you still have access to these OTPs for accessing your financial institutions and so on.
Mm, thank you.
Cool. Any advice for the future aspirants from your perspective, from your journey, from you are living in Japan, US, and in India? Anything that you can advise the future aspirants?
I would say, like, when you're planning to leave, I would say definitely spend some time in India before you leave, and try when you're there, try to see from the perspective of a person living there in and out, accessing the different systems in the society, whether it's schooling, healthcare, banking, ordering food or rides, and and get a feeling of how it could be like. And then from there, and the next thing also would be like, just get your reasons in order, like why you want to move. Like for us, it was really the healthcare, and delegation of chores, so that we can spend more time with our kid or work or something like that. So figure out what those reasons are, because once you move, there will be a lot of situations where you will, like, question the move and be annoyed at the system. But at that time, you really have to revisit your priorities, and remind yourself. So yeah. And nothing is forever. Even if you move to India and you don't like, you can again move out. So keep trying. And yeah, and just like me, I was a bit hesitant to move directly to India. So I was like, oh, Tokyo sounds great. It's like a mix of East and West. So I am close to home, halfway home. So, and a lot of, so you can also do that, find another middle ground, just as a stopgap before you make that final move. And yeah, and to be honest, when I was moving to Japan, I missed a lot of things in the US, but but I learned that even those things are missing in Japan. So when I move to India, I'm sure those things will be also absent. So I wouldn't be like, grudgy against India, and I'll be like more like, okay, even in Japan they don't have it, so it's okay. So like won't be like totally like a hater. So so have more perspective. Yeah, so that's all.
No, yeah, I completely echo with you. If somebody has the thought of moving back, and if they have the flexibility, it's always a good idea to stay in India as a resident, not as a visitor, for couple of months to really experience like how it would be like as a resident of India, like utilizing the systems and using the systems. You can get a good feel for it before the big move. Um, so with that, thank you very much, Ananya, for taking the time and sharing your journey with us. Really helpful. And thank you very much for being open and able to talk to some of the details regarding the healthcare, your son's situation. I'm sure that would be very helpful for some families who might be in a similar boat, how when they were thinking about it. So really appreciate you taking the time and talking to us. Thanks a lot.
No problem, Avinash. Keep up the good work. It was a
Oh,
pleasure.
yeah, thanks. Thank you all for joining us on this insightful journey of Desi Return. If you enjoyed this episode and want to explore more stories and expert advice, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell. Don't forget to leave a comment below with your thoughts and experiences. By the way, check out the links in the description below for our Facebook group and social media for updates and engaging discussions, as well as connecting with fellow Desi Returners. Thank you once again, and until next time, may your Desi Return journey be filled with joy, growth, and endless possibilities.